a football fan today, this is the place to be.
All over the world, from New York to Cape Town, from Boston to Darwin, are watching, waiting, listening, perhaps even praying that their team will win. Oh my words.
So the start of a big weekend.
And that is a thing of beauty. Wonderful football. It's game on. Now that is class. Good score for Damien Dunleavy. Good play by London.
As always, the most perfect setting for a monster final. Over the bar, beautifully done. Back into Cooper. This time there is no doubt. This time it is the clinical finish. Kerry win back the Munster Cup.
Close to 60,000 have gathered here in Croke Park to see Dublin and Meath. And there's a goal chance and they're in. And it's Paul Flynn through as Kevin O'Brien. Great save. Mannion in after it. Goal.
The atmosphere, as always, is wonderful in Clonus. What a fantastic start this is by Monaghan. What a day. Title's going to be there. It's for the first time since 1988.
This is a very special day. Alan Freeman. Oh, that is beautiful. What about that for a spectacular goal? Mayo, Connacht champions, 3 in a row.
Well, we've had a week of verbal sparring, but now it's down to the players. Mayo goal! It's another one for Killian O'Connor. They absolutely annihilated Donegal.
This is going to be epic. Dublin and Kerry. Dublin far too open. Walsh, goal! What a start for Kerry.
This is sensational stuff.
And Mannion in after it. Goal! Mannion still going! There it goal! It's been the game of the year, maybe the game of the decade.
No atmosphere quite like Croke Park on All-Ireland final day. The battle for Sam Maguire concludes here. The 2013 final gets underway. Hopefully in there! And it's in the net! And it's scored by Bernard Brogan! They need something. They might get it. They have got it! Another one for Dublin. It's all over. And Dublin have won the All-Ireland.
Let's begin maybe by getting your own personal highlights of the year. What were your 3 highlights, Malachy, of 2013?
Well, 3 of them, I'd go. One was just a game, Derry and Down, in the Ulster Championship, an amazing game. Second of all was London getting to the Connacht final, winning 5 games, a completely left field story. And my number 1, I'd be a little bit parochial. It'll be Monaghan winning Ulster for the first time in 25 years.
Okay, they were all memorable moments. Kevin McStay, your...
Number 1, I'd have to say the All-Ireland semi-final, Dublin and Kerry. I was co-commentator with Darren on that. It was just a sensational game of football from start to finish. I would say the transformation from one year, Donegal being champions with the style of play they had, that very defensive, but had developed it a bit, and then see Dublin and to a slightly lesser degree, Mayo then change it into, total football almost, and very attack-conscious teams. And again, a bit like Malachy, I dip into, my own Mayo past when I'd say the quarter-final. Not so much Mayo winning it against Donegal, but just the demolition of All-Ireland champions. It was, to lose by, I think it was 16 points in the end. Just, they were wiped, which you don't see often. Champions usually dig in a bit deeper, but they were just wiped on the day. It was, it was a very once-off sort of a game, but Mayo were sensational that day.
All right then, well, let's maybe take up that point with you, Ger. The style of football changing very dramatically, and several teams maybe tried to copy Dublin in some ways. Were you conscious, did Jim Gavin say, we're going to change the style?
He didn't say it with such direct terms. When we started with the new panel under the new management, it was very much a blank canvas as regards to players involved and the style of football that we employed. But I think it's evident to everyone that it was quite an expansive style of football, very much attack-minded, and it was quite contrasting to the previous All-Ireland winners and indeed ourselves in 2011. But I suppose as a player, it's nice to enjoy those new challenges, to see can you adapt to new surroundings and new ideas. So it was a very enjoyable season to play with that style of football.
Okay, well, Malachy, you picked out a game there was one of the great free-scoring games, and it was very interesting that the early days of the Ulster Championship, that we had the Donegal-Tyrone game, which we'll talk about in a moment. It was built up for 6 months in advance, maybe.
Yeah.
And then Down and Derry. And what did you say they scored from play? 3:20.
It was an incredible game. The two teams between them scored 332, but 328 of it came from play.
Amazing, yeah.
And what was really extraordinary about it, I remember coming out of it that day, I was up reporting on it, and you come out of it and went, both teams played with a blanket defence. It wasn't like it was 6 forwards each, 6 backs each, and you know we everybody in space. Two teams played. They got men behind the ball when they didn't have the ball. Then they broke at speed, and the points scored from play that day.
It was unmarkable almost, wasn't it?
Totally.
Yeah, you couldn't get your hands on the block.
Totally.
They were just fantastic.
Yeah, and I counted. There was 15 wides, which is small enough total for one game, but some of the scores from play. Kevin McKernan scored 4 points for Down, all with the outside of his right boot.
Kevin McKernan from the Burren. Oh, he's got that one right out of the sweet spot. Glorious point. Wonderful score. Possession with Kevin McKernan. He's done this so often in the second half, but it's so important. And Derry have nothing to get near him. Kevin McKernan puts them 2 scores ahead. And it's a fabulous score for James McCartan's team.
And there was guys shooting from everywhere, and that kind of way where you'd be going, oh, what do you shoot for? Oh my God, it went over the bar. And it was. Now the day was a kind of an anomaly. It was just a game completely different to an awful lot of what we saw all year.
It's a famous, famous win for James McCartan's Down. Down has beaten the home side by 217 to 115.
The Tyrone-Donegal match had huge hype in advance. Did it live up to it?
Well, I think it did, and you know, when two such strong and successful teams are meeting together on any occasion, you know, there's a lot of pride at stake within the counties. But as a spectator, I enjoyed the encounter anyway.
Donegal won it, and reasonably convincing in the end, but 2 points to make. The Niall Morgan free taking, which had been immaculate up to that in the league, just went out way off radar.
He's put it wide.
And secondly, I remember meeting Mickey Hart in the middle of the summer, and I think they were just getting ready for their qualifier launch. But he was consoling himself that Tyrone had played very, very well against it, and he was raging about the infantile defending that allowed the two goals that turned it.
Huge one all the way up here. McFadden's in, and McFadden scored.
He was raging about his defending, his team defending, and very happy that they had a future, because he knew, well, we were every bit the match of Donegal, and it turned out that way. When you look at they got all the way to the semi thereafter. It was a great contest in terms of the tension in it.
And here comes Paddy McBrearty. In along the baseline, it's in! Amazingly, Ross Werrity, and it's a second Donegal goal.
So Monaghan, meanwhile, come on, take us through the joy of it now as a Monaghan man.
Look, it's always very easy for me to be neutral, because Monaghan never do anything. They never win anything. They get to the odd league final, but that was about it. And I have gone to watch them play in Ulster finals before, in 07 and 010, and been really nervous for them. This year I went up not being in the slightest bit nervous. Maybe I had just, like a lot of people, completely overlooked what they had to offer. They had got through a very scrappy game against Antrim. They had pulled through a tough game against Cavan. Now, Cavan were very good, it turned out, but Monaghan got through it with it could have gone against them in the last minute. They could have had a free given against the goalkeeper in the last minute. So I went with no expectation, but they went out, they blitzed them, they scored the first 4 points, got on top, and at no point were Donegal coming back into it.
And they're just playing it around now, trying to safely guard possession. Desi Moan gets the point here in the Ulster final, and he stretches the lead. 5 between them again. And here's Christopher McGuinness. And within moments of coming on, Christopher McGuinness gets a point in the Ulster final, and that may very well seal it now. There's the final whistle, and Monaghan are the new Ulster champions. And there is absolutely no shred of doubt whatsoever about the quality of their victory.
I mean, it was incredible, and you know, somewhere like my hometown, Monaghan Town, that night, there happened to be a country music festival on up there that weekend.
And so every week.
So it turned out that there was a stage set up in the middle of the Diamond in Monaghan Town, and I remember the night because it was a really balmy night, and around midnight, there was still like 3,000 people in the Diamond in Monaghan Town, and it was like nothing I'd ever
But
seen.
the cup arrived, it had.
The cup arrived. The team arrived up on the stage and waved the cup at everybody. It was funny. Somebody was saying to me, if this was in Tyrone, they would have at least organised a microphone. So they just came out and waved and then walk off again. But it was great. It was a genuinely lovely and completely surprising feeling.
For Donegal, I mean, you experienced it the year before when you were trying to defend an All-Ireland title. And Jim McGuinness had said Donegal would step up from the year they won it. It's a very hard thing to do, isn't it?
It is, particularly when you haven't achieved that success in a long time. And you know, personally, not speaking for the rest of the guys in the team, I felt there was a big hangover in 2012, and that hangover didn't finish until Mayo rightly knocked us out.
You take all that, and all of that is sort of slightly amorphous and intangible, but then you get down to the fact that Mark McHugh got injured, Carl Lacey got injured, Neil Gallagher got injured. You know, they did not have the biggest, deepest panel to begin with. They were started treading water for a while, you know, and it was. They
And you
sort
can
of ran
only
out
do
of
that
bodies
so
a little
long
bit.
as we saw then in that quite extraordinary game against Mayo.
Frantic stuff, comes back to Kevin McLaughlin. McLaughlin, O'Connor, what a goal, what a start. Keeper comes, doesn't get it, and Donald Vaughan rolls in a second. Mayo goal. What an amazing start.
I think they just hit the wall. It was, you know, that hangover, and then some team takes you out of your misery, if you want to put it that way. That you've been trying to, it's been fire brigade stuff all summer, and you're hanging on by a thread, and the next thing, bang, you hit the wall, and someone just blows you away.
Donald Vaughan's got one goal. This time he sets up for Killian O'Connor, who's now got two. And it is something of a rout. Andy Moran cracking one, stopped and put in the back of the net by Killian O'Connor again. And the game is up, and Donegal, the All-Ireland champions from 2012, lose their crown, and they lose it to a magnificent Mayo side.
Mayo performed particularly well that day. No matter what the opposition was, Mayo played really well that day.
Is it fair to say, though, London emerged as maybe the team of the Connacht Championship, Malachy?
Oh, easily, you know. They were certainly the story of it. Mayo were obviously the team of it, but from a journalist point of view, we cheer for the story rather than the team. So, yeah, London was
You went to
amazing.
visit them, didn't you?
Yeah, before the Connacht final, I had a great day. I spent a day with Shane Mulligan, who is their centre back. I spent his working day with him from, I think it was 5:15 in the morning until we went to Ruislip that night, and traversed London with him.
What was he doing?
He was in construction, and he was down by Woolwich, which if you can picture the London Tube map, don't even picture the map, just picture the bottom right-hand corner of a rectangle. He was right down there, and he had to get from there to the very top left-hand corner, which was where Ruislip is. And he left work at, we'll say, at 5:20, and got to training at about 7:10. Almost
Public
2
transport,
hours
yeah.
of public transport. And this is what these guys have to do
And it's
every
packed.
night. Oh, packed. You're going down into the tube, you know, you're crossing essentially 8 million people travelling at commuter time. And it's extraordinary that these people do it. Like, one of the funny things he was saying at one time, I was saying, God, it's so hot, and it's so hot and sweaty. and I had a bottle of water, and he was going, yeah, they're always on to me to drink water, but I always say to them, it's easy for you saying that, there's no toilet until I get to Ruislip.
The scenes of celebration the night that we did you see those?
Oh, yeah, in the dressing room.
The lads won. It kind of gave a sense of how special it was.
Well, I've always found from travelling abroad, particularly to like New York and recently Boston, and then we were over in London a couple of years ago with Dublin, the sense of identity as an Irish person, I think it grows tenfold because they're away from home, and it's interesting to hear that story of a guy working over in London and still being committed to his sport, his national sport, so far away from home.
Will they be able to repeat it?
It's difficult. The one thing, and it's funny, this is another thing that I didn't really get until they sort of explained it to me. People assume that because of the recession there are more footballers over there. That's actually not the case, or at least they say it's not the case. What is the case is that because of the recession, they don't lose as many people. So the reason that they say that they had the success was that they have kept a team together for 2 years. If they can keep it together for 3, you'll never know. But the thing is, the cat's out of the bag now, of course.
The biggest crowd of the summer so far, close to 60,000, have gathered here in Croke Park to see Dublin and Meath meet for the 60th time in the championship. Kilkenny at it straight away. Mannion has got free, and there's a goal chance, and they're in, and it's Paul Flynn. Well, that was very easy. Stephen Bray again. Can they draw level? That's an interesting ball in towards Michael Newman. He's got it. Newman for Meath. Goes for the point, and he's got it. And Meath are level. 4 unanswered points. Here they come again. Here's Eamon Wallace, has got 1 point, and now he's got another. Brilliant from Eamon Wallace, and he punches the air in delight. Written off by everybody. They do believe that they can leave here with the Delaney Cup. Second half begins with Meath leading by 2 points. Kieran Kilkenny, over it goes, back to within 1, and that is just the start that Dublin would have wanted. Quick ball, Kevin McMenamin, and now going through is Kevin O'Brien. Great save, Mannion in after it, goal, Paul Mannion. And is that the move for Dublin now, with just over 10 minutes to go? Diarmuid Connolly spinning one way then the other, brilliant little pass into Dean Rock. He's only on the field about a minute. It's in the blood, isn't it? 7-point lead for Dublin. There's the Delaney Cup. And Dublin have claimed it for the 8th time in 9 seasons. Meath played their part in an enthralling Leinster final, leading at half-time. But a real significant third quarter push for Dublin put them over the line.
Meath and Dublin games, as everyone knows, and it's been well documented over the years and decades, have been so close. I think they were ahead by 2 points at half-time, and we were chasing our tails, and it was a very hot day. I remember that day in Croke Park, and we were struggling. Thankfully, we kind of got ourselves right for the second half, and we luckily came out on top.
Is it a big difference here? You've been through the back door as well. Is it a big difference to win your provincial title?
Oh, absolutely. You know, you start of each campaign, you want to do well in the league, obviously, but when you're getting into the championship, you want to win every game because you don't go out to play to lose or to play average. Yeah. And if it results in winning your provincial title, well, it's brilliant.
Well, Martin Skelly presenting the Delaney Cup to the Dublin captain, Stephen Cluxton. They're Leinster champions for the 52nd time.
Tyrone provided us, or Sean Kavanagh provided us with one of the biggest talking points in the championship. Or maybe it was Joe Bradley provided us with the biggest talking point. But,
look, it was what it was, and you know...
What was it?
Conor McManus was heading through on goal. There was 20 minutes left. The game was very tight. There was only a point or two in it, and he just dragged him down.
And McManus is hauled down. Well, that is deliberate. It is Sean Kavanagh.
That was a definite goaling chance that time for Conor McManus. He skinned, I think it was Dermot Carlin. Got through, and Kavanagh rugby tackles him to the ground.
Goal was on.
Goal was on, and in fairness to him, if he hadn't done it, his brother would have done it in the next step. And he took his yellow card just as You know, he's been taking yellow cards when needed, and just as players take yellow cards when needed.
And then this happened.
What Sean Kavanagh did, I cannot believe that somebody awarded him the man of the match. That was a total and absolute disgrace. That's the antithesis, hold on, of what Gaelic games are about. You're supposed to be able to look your opponent in the face. What do we teach kids? Respect for yourself, respect for your opponent. I take an under-12 team. If any of them did that, they wouldn't play for the team again. And yet, hold on, yet this is being touted around the country. And people are saying things like, well, it's within the rules, they're only up. It's not within the rules. You're not supposed to rugby tackle someone from behind. It was a total disgrace, and I'll tell you something else about it. I mean, nobody has stood up for Tyrone more during the 2000s than I have in this studio, when they were getting all sorts of abuse from you and from you. But I'll tell you this, I'll not be standing up for that. That's an absolute disgrace.
It was one of the great TV moments of the year, there's no doubt about it. Personally, I'm not entirely sure why people got so het up about it. I mean, no disrespect to the Sunday game and all that, but, you know, you are just a television programme. Sean Kavanagh is the game. You know, why people got so offended on his behalf when he wasn't even that offended.
That made the debate interesting. There wasn't every player said, well, I'd do it.
Every player, even Conor McManus said.
And wouldn't they? Of course they would. Joe's point, by the way, now is right. The substantive point is correct, but now he went way. He took out the man instead of the ball, in my opinion.
Much like Sean Kavanagh.
Well, much like Sean. But I turn this over always to the legislators. Cynical fouling didn't just start the day Sean Kavanagh put it down.
Let's get the defender's view on it.
No, well, not so much as a defender, but as a player, I think in any sport, excuse me, or walk of life, there are rules and regulations, but there's also cultural norms, things that people accept. And I think that cynical fouling or trying to stop your man gaining an advantage, particularly at the dying stage of a game, like you two lads have mentioned, players will do that. Is it wrong? Technically it's wrong, but as regards the culture and the bigger picture, it's perfectly fine.
Will James Horan and Mayo reach the All-Ireland final for the second year in a row, or will it be Tyrone for the first time since 2008? McGinley going forward past the 13, nobody coming in to challenge him, and he blazes it over the crossbar. A wonderful start by Tyrone. Ball inside, good ball, Farris, Conor McAliskey, nice turn, really nice score. Good play by Tyrone. Chris Barrett going forward. Just behind him is Keith Higgins. What about this? By a run from Chris Barrett, the left corner back. And that is over the bar. Inside is Colin Boyle. But survives. He's on the 20. Make it the 13. Here comes the shot as he fouls inside the large rectangle. It's a penalty. A penalty for Mayo. Colin Boyle took on the Tyrone defence. Was it outside the large rectangle? A turning point in the All-Ireland football semi-final. Alan Freeman taking on Pascal McConnell. Here's Freeman. It's in the back of the net. And Mayo are in front. Nice ball inside for Alan Freeman. Nice turn. Oh, what about the finish? Is that going over the bar? Now that is class. Brilliant individual skill by Alan Freeman. The full-time whistle blows. Mayo are in the All-Ireland football final.
What did you make of the Mayo-Tyrone game?
I didn't have any sense, really, not, and I'm not being overconfident from a Mayo perspective. I thought Mayo were absolutely going to win that. And yet, they got really wobbly for a period of the game, where the game wasn't going well for them at all. To Mayo's credit, I think there was a new sense about Mayo, that they were more steely, they were more hardened. Well, they'd want to be. I mean, you know, after the recent finals, if you have to learn stuff about yourself from that. And I really felt Mayo had learned a lot of things about themselves, and they weren't going to be found wanting. So I had no sense that they were going to lose it, but they made a good old effort at making it hard on themselves to win it. But in the end, they won it by 6. So it was comfortable enough in the end.
It was,
but a
it
little
was
bit
in the
wobbly.
end,
you know.
and I think what we all came out of Croke Park that day saying was that it was exactly the game that they needed. Because they had walked through the rest of their games.
Yeah.
I think they had won the rest of their games by an aggregate of 61 points before that. They needed a game where they had to have a gut check, and that was, you know, and they still, and they still had some players that weren't really doing it.
I think it was that's a really good point. The 61, that aggregate coming into it, but it was the first time all year that, following the game, pundits, analysts, I'm sure the opposition players, even some of the Mayo players perhaps, but certainly Mayo supporters, it was the first time they said, oh gee, have we got the forwards? Because there was a big period in the game where nothing was happening up front. And so I just put that little bit of a question mark about the quality of their attack.
The game of the year was Kerry and Dublin.
Question on everybody's lips. What is it about Dublin v Kerry? Is it Hill 16 on sunny days in June, or Fitzgerald Stadium with the green and the gold in bloom? Is it Heffo's Heroes or Jacko's Field, and is it Paddy's Day in September dreaming? Is it U2 or Tom Crean? Is it Bernard Brogan or Brian Sheen? What is it about Dublin versus Kerry? Is it Kevin Moore or Colin Cooper, or when Paddy Cullen made a blooper? Is it Pints of Black or Kerry Gold? Is it Fortunes Made with tickets sold? Is it Molly Malone or Funky the Dolphin? Is it Ballybunion for the golfing? What is it about Dublin versus Kerry? Is it Gabe Byrne or the Rose of Tralee? Is it the Bomber Liston or the IFSC? Is it Brendan Behan or John B. Keane? Is it Daniel O'Connell or Stevens Green? Is it Mikey Sheehy or Kieran Whelan or Grafton Street with Busker Squealing? What is it about Dublin versus Kerry? Is it Brian Mullins or Paddy O'Shea? Is it the Listowel Races or the Dort to Bray? Is it rural, urban, city, country? Is it Pat Spillane or Eamon Dunphy? What is it about Dublin versus Kerry?
This is going to be epic. Dublin and Kerry for the 27th time. Here's Anthony Marr. Dermot Connolly making it really hard for him, and they've turned the ball over. Here is Dermot Connolly. Two-footed player, and Connolly slots that one over. Very comfortable on his left as well as the right. Tomas O'Shea. Invited to come forward. Dermot Connolly there with him. He has to go back and get help from Colin Cooper. Thought about the shot. Goes with a very precise pass to Walsh. They've got in around the back. O'Donoghue! Goal! What a goal from James O'Donoghue. And what a pass from Colin Cooper.
And what a pass from Donegal Walsh. The little reverse hand pass puts him through here. There it is. And sticks it. If you're going to score from that distance against Cluxton, it better be a good one. Down low in the corner.
Donegal Walsh. Johnny Buckley for Kerry. Now Colin Cooper. Donegal Walsh is completely free. They're back in again. Dublin far too open. Walsh, goal! What a start for Kerry. And Donegal Walsh. 2-2 to 3 points. An amazing start by Kerry.
And this time it is the Gooch's pass. One-on-one, brilliant finish, absolutely brilliant finish. On Cluxton, Dara, they are so hard, but look at Gooch's vision again. That's why he's at 11, that's why he's conducting the orchestra. Brilliant pass, brilliant finish by Donegal Walsh. What a score.
Who saw this coming? Dermot Connolly. Tomas O'Shea there, and Mannion an absolute goal! Paul Mannion! And what a game we have on our hands. Paul Mannion's goal. They're back in business, but Kerry still lead.
Well, once again, the shot for a point that drops short, one of the most dangerous balls in Gaelic football. But Mannion comes across it and just tomahawks it into the net with a fantastic contact. What a game.
Here's Colin Cooper. He's got away again. O'Carroll backs off and Colin Cooper allowed to go unhindered. And Cooper just never going to miss from there to bring Kerry level. Cooper, James O'Donoghue, and O'Donoghue. Oh, it's still in play. Here's Donncha Walsh looking for another goal. Walsh dragged down, penalty, Kerry penalty. Stephen Cluxton dragging Donncha Walsh down. James O'Donoghue has scored 1 goal already. O'Donoghue, brilliant penalty. What a stunning penalty. Kerry, they take charge again. Bernard Brogan and Paul Mannion screaming for the ball particularly, and it goes up to Mannion. Behind him, will want it on his left boot. Had help from McCaffrey. Mannion still going. Here's Dean Rock from a very tricky angle. Rock, and there's his first point. He's only on the field about a minute. Dublin have it off Keely's kick-out. Paul Flynn, different sort of performance from him today. Here's Bernard Brogan. McCarthy had got free. Bernard Brogan, that's right out of the sweet spot, and his eye is very definitely in. They were 4 in arrears at one point during this second half. They've got the last 4 to move level. Kerry have got it back. Declan O'Sullivan skips away from the challenge. Colm Cooper. Darren O'Sullivan, now possibilities for Kerry. O'Sullivan weaving one way then the other and slots it over, and Kerry go back in front.
This is just great stuff. 1 ball in, 1 ball out, scores. It's got everything, absolutely everything.
James O'Donoghue had an incredible first half. O'Donoghue, angle tricky. Bastick got a hand in. Here's Kieran Donaghy. Now Declan O'Sullivan. Declan O'Sullivan for Kerry, it's on its way, but it's wide. Missing it on the near side. It looked good initially. It stays a draw game. It's belted long by Cluxton, and it's going to be a Kerry ball, is it? Michael Darragh Macaulay, brilliant. Here's Kevin McMenamin. Memories of 2011 as he burst through. The sides are level. McMenamin still going. He's done it again. Could have taken the point. What a goal from Kevin McMenamin. He spotted Keely off his line, and is that the move that takes Dublin to the All-Ireland final?
Well, what an effort by Darragh Macaulay. Darragh, I think he actually does go for the point here. I stand correct. Yes, I believe he did.
It's been the game of the year, maybe the game of the decade by some distance. Michael Darragh Macaulay with the icing on the cake. He has been absolutely fantastic. They're in around the back. O'Gara goal! Rock just made sure it may have crossed the line in the first instance. I think it did. O'Gara will get the goal, and that is the icing on the cake. And Jim Gavin, in his first year in charge of the Dublin senior footballers,
it's all over,
has brought his team to this, and they are in the All-Ireland final. It was over the line. They've got 3 goals of their own, 3-18 to 3-11. And what a stunning game of Gaelic football we have witnessed.
I couldn't believe it when I was just reading back on my notes that they won the game in the end by 7 points.
7 points.
That's like
They were level after 6 with a minute and a half to go.
I mean, that's sensational. The manner, the start of the game was magnificent. Those passes, those goals at the beginning for Kerry against a goalkeeper. They were making Stephen Cluxton look ordinary, actually, which is a hard thing to do now. Gooch was just for that little. He was at another. He was, they were all there, and then the next, and he was up there all on his own, conducting everything. It was magnificent.
Your reflections on it, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, it was such an astonishing day. I think it did contain my absolute favourite moment of the year, and I'm sorry Jerry's sitting beside me, but the little solo that Colm Cooper did, just to catch yourself and Cian O'Sullivan.
Played it through the gap.
And played it through the gap. Just in that little piece of genius, I think was to me what, like, people give out about Gaelic football an awful lot, and we're very hard on it at times, but it's a game of such possibility. And that little pause,
that was magnificent.
It completely just bought him a second, because I'd say yourself and Cian both probably thought that we're doing okay here, we're double teaming him, he hasn't a lot of room to go inside. But that little pause, and just got the two of you to bite on it, and then played the ball through. It was incredible, and it's no disgrace, of course, for yourself. From that and for the rest of the day, the game was amazing. For Dublin to come through that and win that was such an incredible feat. I know a lot of Kerry people all have said in the aftermath, people talk about these classic games, they only talk about them when Kerry lose them. And there is certainly that element of it. But for Dublin to fight their way through that was an extraordinary feat. It really genuinely was, and it was certainly the game of the year.
Well, Jerry, you had the unenviable task of marking Colm Cooper that day.
Yeah, I certainly had. Yeah, Colm is a super player, and I said that in the lead up, in the media stuff, in the lead up to the game, and I'm very comfortable in saying that now. It was a challenge for me on the day, but I think the strength of our panel, came through, and everyone who was involved in the 26 really proved their worth.
Because they did make changes, and you were one of the changes. But how difficult? Tell us about Colm Cooper and when you're marking him. What makes him so difficult, or what makes him so great, rather?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's obviously a question that many defenders haven't figured out just yet. But so come back to me maybe next year.
You're working on it.
I'm working on it. Yeah.
Well, we could see his greatness. I mean, obviously on the screen, but.
But there's some guys, like, you can look at Messi in the soccer, some guys you know what they're going to do, and then stopping it is another thing. So you try to limit their influence as best you can, but you got to take on the chin that they're going to do some sort of damage, and then you try to just focus maybe on the other end and maybe outscore them. As a neutral, if I was a neutral watching that Kerry Dublin game during the summer, it's probably the real winner, I'd say, was the fans in GA football, maybe in comparison to maybe the two previous seasons where we won. We were defensive in many ways, and Donegal were defensive in many ways, while effective. I think probably football was the real winner on that day.
The Voice is back with a
Well, comes to the final then, Dublin Mayo. There was great optimism in Mayo despite your own doubts, wasn't there, Malachy?
Absolutely, yeah, there was.
And justifiably, maybe?
Utterly justifiably. I mean, it was one of those years, and it doesn't happen every year, but it was one of those years where there was a blanket acceptance that the two best teams were in the final. Nobody had come through the soft side of the draw. No big teams had really knocked each other out. It was Dublin and Mayo had been the two best teams all year. I think we were all agreed on that. And I thought they had a great chance. I tipped them in the week when, everybody gets asked during the week, Dublin or Mayo. I went with Mayo. I just thought that they had this thing about them. They had this sort of life force that Donegal had the year before. Arguments against it were that Dublin's forwards and Dublin's scoring power was at its best, was at a higher level than Mayo's forwards and Mayo's scoring power at its best.
And the ball goes astray. It was intended for Colm Boyle, but it breaks down, and there's a chance, and there might still be a chance, and there finally is, and it's put over the bar. And right now it's Mayo again, attacking with some purpose, and it's Lee Keegan, and Keegan does well, knocks it nonchalantly almost over the bar.
And Mayo started so well, didn't they? I mean, they went, 4-1 up. It was a great start for Mayo.
Yeah, they did, and we probably started poorly in a lot of games. I think we're certainly not the finished article as regards starting games. And, that's something which we needed to change quite quickly on the pitch. We had the experience of, a slow start against Kerry as well, and indeed Kildare in the Leinster Championship semi-final. So I suppose it's that unspoken confidence that that you can get things back and see what happens from there.
Paul Flynn kicks it long, hopefully in there, and it's in the net, and it's scored by Bernard Brogan, and a goal that comes after 16 minutes ties ties up the match at 1-1 to 4 points. Back in as far as Kilkenny, and Kilkenny sees that one come back. Should have been either a point or a goal there. Bernard Brogan once again stepping up to the mark. Played back in here once again to Andy Moran. Can he finish? Yes, he can. Lovely score by Andy Moran.
What did you think at half-time, Malachy? Did you think Mayo, were still in a good place? They were ahead in the All-Ireland final?
I was far more confident before the game than I was at half-time. I think at half-time I thought Dublin's greatest strength, as far for an outsider looking in, Dublin's greatest strength all year was what they can replenish with. Come 50 minutes, 55 minutes, 60 minutes, they could take better talent off the bench than any other team. And that was what I always felt about them, that if a team can stay with them, they can stay with them. But you had all the way through the year, you had a solution for an awful lot of problems. If you take the Meath game, there was a bit of trouble in midfield. Dennis Bastick goes in. He sorts that area out. Kevin McManaman comes off the bench. Owen O'Gara comes off the bench. They had these replenishments. And I think at half-time I thought really Mayo need to be further ahead here.
Kevin, you don't agree about Mayo's place at half-time?
Well, I don't think so, Malachy. I think Mayo would have been in a really good space when they were in at half-time. I'd say that for a couple of reasons. The one thing they didn't want was the goals, as in the previous All-Irelands. They'd talked a lot about that.
Not conceding goals.
Now, having said that, Bernard Brogan's goal would be seen as very much against the run of play, and it kind of knocked Mayo off that little bit of momentum. I think they were at 4-1 at that stage, and they were looking fairly good. They would have known that they were in fantastic condition. They went in a point up. I mean, that was a new place for Mayo teams in an All-Ireland final in many respects, because of this, the two finals against Kerry were over after 20 minutes. The Donegal one, they were in huge trouble after 15 minutes. Now they were a point up. I think their heads would have been very, very, very good. I know they were in fantastic nick, and they were tackling like demons. So they were well into the game. And traditionally, they power on in the third quarter. This current team really drive on. They came out of the tunnel, and you'd think, well, now this is the moment. The third quarter, this is everything.
Cian O'Sullivan in towards the end line here on the 13-metre line, turns, strikes and puts it over the bar. Lovely point by the midfielder, and so the teams are level. This is going to bounce awkwardly in here. O'Gara's got it, and that's magnificent goalkeeping. It's gone over the bar, but it should have been a goal, really. Here comes Michael Darragh-Macaulay, and Flynn completes the movement. He makes it 1-8 to 9 points. It means Dublin are ahead by 2. 45 metres out. Brogan again, kicking beautifully over the bar. Dublin are leading by 3.
Well, they came out and scored 5 of the first 6 points. That's what you did, and in a way, it wasn't sort of getting a run on Mayo like the sort of classic Dublin getting a run on a team does. Like there was no goals in it or whatever, but they just came out and were dominating midfield. The O'Sheas weren't a factor now. Cluxton's kickouts were just away from Aidan O'Shea, out to the wings every time, and Dublin were getting on them and moving them forward.
They've lost 6 finals since their last victory in 1951. They need something. They might get it. They have got it. Right spot, right time, right man. Andy Moran. And the side's level at 1-9 to 1-9.
Andy Moran's goal, a bit like Bernard Brogan's, kind of came against the run of play, a little bit against the run of play, and all of a sudden now there's a life raft for Mayo, and they're back in it. But the Mayo fans, there was as if they couldn't fully buy into it. And I think it actually can seep down onto the pitch, that kind of edginess that the crowd have.
Right now it's Paul Flynn who's trying to win this game for the Dubs. Who's going to be victorious? McMenamin, Macaulay, back in beautifully here. An opportunity with Bastick. Goal! Another one for Dublin and another one for Bernard Brogan. 2 goals in the final. This one coming after 54 minutes. And Ger Brennan comes storming forward here. He'd love to score in this final. He was a doubt beforehand. Nothing doubtful about that. Now, is that going to prove a winner for Dublin? It would be a huge victory for Jim Gavin if it turns out this way. Up comes Cluxton, 1 pointed free in the first half, and now he's nailed another one. Hugely important score by Stephen Cluxton, the 31-year-old, the captain. They need a goal. They're 2 behind still. This has to be it for Killian O'Connor and Mayo. Heaven help him, I don't know how he's going to do it. Well, he's kicked it over the bar and he's got an 8th point. Something of an anticlimax because there's 1 point between the teams. 212 to 114. The amateur whistlers supporting Dublin, encouraging the referee to blow that final whistle at the end of the 2013 All-Ireland football final. Cluxton, the captain, kicking out. The whistle sounds, it's all over, and Dublin have won the All-Ireland. Champions once again, champions for the 2nd time in 3 years. Liam O'Neill ready to present the Sam Maguire Cup to Stephen Cluxton as Dublin are the new All-Ireland champions, champions of 2013, champions for the 24th time.
There's 3 probably key memories that I have from the final. The first one is the final whistle and goal, and Cian O'Sullivan and myself are nearest to each other, so we're hugging and pulling over each other, and next while someone else comes in. So there's that 10 to 15 seconds of jubilation that you cannot describe or do justice to it in words. I think the experience in the dressing room, some of the guys spoke, you know, that sense of togetherness, having soldiers with many of the guys for the last 8 years. You know, the third and final moment is when I met my parents and my girlfriend. So it was great to share a couple of moments with them as well.
We put in a monstrous effort. The lads in management probably couldn't have done much more, and yet to be just that taxi ride short again of it. You know, it's just it's awful hard to keep taking it, and yet they'll come back again. 2014, they'll pull down the new canvas and go again. I must tell you something very very funny. There's in the aftermath, they were down in Castlebar for the homecoming, and there was a few lads, you know, morale was fairly low, and you say, well, you know, there's another one gone, and he proclaimed to his buddy, he said, I'm really glad Mayo didn't win it. It would have papered over a lot of cracks. But it was that sort of a game that Mayo they could have won it, but Dublin were the better team on the day.
Are Dublin going to dominate now, do you think?
Going back a little bit to what I was saying about the All-Ireland final and what they did, how they won their games, they have a second wave off the bench that a lot of other teams just can't compete with. Or not can't compete with, but they don't have that sort of depth. Or at least that was the case this year. They have every opportunity to go on and really be in or around semi-final, final for the next few years, and there's every chance that they will win 3 of the next 5.
I can hear the ocean